Welcome to another episode of Touring the AFC South. I am your host, Mike Patton, and we have talked about all the teams in the AFC South, the Titans, the Colts. We've talked about the Jaguars, but the team that has definitely made the most noise in the AFC South this offseason is the Houston Texans. And on this episode, we're going to be talking with ESPN.com Texas reporter DJ Bien-Bien-Aime basically about the Texans, free agency, and the draft, and how they just kind of blew it out of the water in free agency. We're going to get into that. But first, of course, with every episode, I have to get off your chest moment. And in this episode, kind of going outside of the division, going to talk about the draft. Going to talk about Mr. Greg McElroy and his comments towards Caleb Williams. Now, of course, you got to keep it within context. He kind of talked about a lot of different things, but, with Caleb Williams, he talked about basically
not facing adversity.
Yeah, not facing any adversity. Which I found quite interesting that Greg McElroy would say that. And he played for Alabama. I know he wasn't the highest recruit in the world. I understand that. However, he was someone that had the team pretty much built around him where he didn't really face very much adversity at all, if any. So it's amazing to me that he wants to talk about Caleb Williams facing adversity when he really faced none at all. And if you want to talk about some adversity that Caleb Williams faced, of course, they didn't live up to expectations this past year. They went 7-5. And then, of course, he didn't, Caleb Williams stated this on social media, by the way. Didn't start his freshman year. Of course, came in towards the end and different things there. Had expectations that, of course, the team did not reach as well. So he has faced some adversity. Of course, popped his hamstring and tweaked his hamstring a couple different times in crucial moments as well. So, for Greg McElroy to kind of state that, to me, it's kind of doing a lazy job.
Yeah.
Not necessarily doing all the research or looking into things. And it seems to me like maybe he has some preconceived thoughts about him and that he was trying to just get out there and kind of be like, okay, cool. This, I can use this to kind of go with my preconceived thoughts I have about Caleb Williams. I mean, you have any thoughts on anything he said?
Yeah, I think when you said, he hasn't seen adversity, he hasn't faced adversity, and you said, obviously Alabama, the team was built around him. He didn't really see that much adversity either. I would say that maybe that's why he thought. Obviously, he was incorrect. Caleb did face adversity, especially last year at USC. With that offensive line and some of just the play call structures. But from his perspective, he knows what it's like when you don't face adversity and you go to the NFL, how much harder that transition will be. So maybe he was speaking from a personal standpoint of, I know what it's like when you're at the big school and you have the best athletes and you have the most talent and you get to the league, you might get punched in the mouth. It's going to be a culture shock where you got there, you don't have the best talent around you, things like that. But obviously, Caleb Williams didn't have that last year at USC, so he's more than equipped to go handle adversity. And on top of it, he's going into a situation where he goes to the Bears, which we all 99% think he will. They've been throwing Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, and they could add Romeo Odunze. If you have those three receivers, you're still facing adversity, but you're gonna have guys that can lift you up through the adversity. I think. When it comes to adversity, a lot of it comes down to when you face it, who do you have around you to help pull you out of that rut, Because if you go through every, patch of adversity by yourself, you're not going to be able to pull yourself out of it every single time. So even though if you, quote unquote, don't think he faced that much adversity at USC, he's going to have people that can pull him out of that adversity with the Chicago Bears, with his offensive coordinator, Sharon Walden, who helped Geno Smith have a pretty good season, past 2 seasons. Obviously, they're going to have the receiving core that he has with, again, because number one receiver is always a rookie quarterback's best friend. I know people say good online, things like that. Yeah, for sure. But having a stud wide receiver, you could just drop back and just toss it to them and not to really read coverage at times, that's also a win. And he's gonna have two of those guys. So his concern makes sense if it was accurate, right? Like let's say Caleb didn't face that much adversity, then okay, I can see where he's coming from because if USC had all the talent in the world, because we've seen that across the board with quarterbacks that have an abundance of talent get to the NFL and they struggle a little bit. But I think even that's a little overblown. Because CJ Sharp was throwing to Marvin Harrison Jr., Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, JSN, so 4 first-round receivers. And he stepped into the NFL and was tearing it up. So I think it was a case-by-case basis, you feel me? So
yeah, definitely. It just was quite interesting to hear those comments. And I was like, okay, but it isn't the first time to me that you've heard something from Greg McElroy to make you scratch your head. But hey, he's entitled to his opinion. Just I don't agree with the opinion.
Yeah, won't be the first. Wasn't the first, and won't be the last.
Right, exactly. But speaking of first and last, of course, the Houston Texans went from worst to first in the division last year, and definitely, turned some heads and opened some eyes while winning a first round a wild card game, and then of course before losing to the Baltimore Ravens. But this offseason, they definitely are aiming to make that run yet again. Of course, I want to talk about one of the newest moves that happened. That would be Stephon Diggs, trading for Stephon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills. Didn't really give up a ton. They actually gave them a pick with it with Stephon Diggs. So I'm like, okay, wow. So, I mean, you're closer to the situation. So do you have any kind of insight to how that all this kind of went down? Or, was there any kind of posturing going forth that we don't know about?
Yeah, no, I think the Texans just they came with an offer because again, the Bills GM said that they didn't plan on trading Stephon, but they got a deal that they felt they couldn't pass up, which was the Vikings' second 2025 draft pick. I mean, before the Texans tried to trade for Keenan Allen, obviously they offered a third in 2025, and obviously the Bears went with, the Chargers went with the 4th round pick for this draft, which makes sense, right? Third this year, third next year versus a 4th this year. I mean, the chances of the third next year being better than the player going into year 2 that you can get in the 4th, I can understand why, it might not be that high, so I can understand why the Bears went, but the Chargers went with the Bears offer. But, I would say, they wanted to upgrade the receiver room because they saw what happened once the injuries started to set in, right? Because they had Tank, they had Nico, they had Robert, they had Noah Brown. That was their main 4. And Tank gets hurt. Because after Tank got hurt in week 13, they averaged 17 points per game, 26 in the league. Now, granted, some of those stats include Case Keenum starting, and there was one game where they put up a big donut. I mean, they might have scored 16 points, something like that. Because the Tennessee game, when she first came back, and they put up 26. But even that Colts game, I believe they put up 23, or it might have been 23, or it might have been 21, one of the two. But it wasn't like they had the big first play, but then the offense kind of sputtered for the majority of the rest of the game. Outside of like some crucial drives at the end of the first half, and then basically the quote unquote game winning drive. So it was 23-19. So they knew once injuries happened, I think Robert was still available. I know the first playoff game, yes, they scored 45, but a lot of that was the defense going crazy in the second half, and a lot of that was Bobby Slow scheming up wide open guys, and that they was able to take advantage of that. But that Baltimore Ravens game, you saw what just having one receiver did. They couldn't do much, at all. Granted, CJ was a rookie, and they struggled at the line of scrimmage. That game was more about the loss of the line of scrimmage than anything. But also, they didn't have any playmakers that could make anything happen. So, CJ's on a rookie contract. It makes sense to load up when it comes to weapon standpoint. It makes sense to load up and add pieces on top of pieces. DeMeco Ryan sit at the owners meeting. They wanted to upgrade the entire roster. and they're always looking to upgrade the entire roster. So the Diggs move, when you look at the contract, is basically a 1-year deal. So there is some risk to it, right? Because you basically voided his contract, voided the rest of his contract, and it's basically gave a second round pick for Stephon Diggs, who could be gone next offseason, right? Because Diggs is going to be in a situation where he's going to share the rock with Nico and Tank and Dalton, right? Like obviously Dalton's probably fourth on that totem pole, but it's going to be a mix. It's going to be a shuffle of deck, and you have Bobby Slowick, who comes from the Kyle Shanahan tree, like directly from the Kyle Shanahan tree, which means he's going to want to run the ball, right? He's going to want to be balanced, and they did trade for Joe Mixon. So the risk is you did give up a second-round pick, which is a valuable pick, for a guy that could end up being a complimentary piece, So that's that. I mean, I think it does for 2024 give you potentially the most explosive offense in the league. Because you're going to have CJ going into year 2. You're going to have Hank coming out, coming back from injury. You're going to have Nico, who just had a 1,200-yard season, well, basically 1,300, 3 yards off from 1,300. And Stephon Diggs, who's made the Pro Bowl the last 4 years, and is two-time All-Pro. 1 year, I think 2020 was first team, and 2022 might have been second team. But yeah, so that's what you're walking. That's the offense, and you have Joe Mixon. Who, while he did have 1,000 yards, some of the advanced stats did say he might be declining, but you're still gonna have a pretty effective offense across the board, right? It's gonna be able to create explosive plays, and when injuries happen, which is inevitable, you're gonna have the depth. You're gonna have the top end depth because a lot of people, they talk about being able to go 3, 4, 5 deep, but in the NFL, like your third receiver usually isn't that good anyway, and your fourth receiver for sure isn't going to be a difference maker. But like they're legitimately the fourth guy could be Noah Brown, who at times last year went for. He actually had back-to-back games where he went for over $150. Against the Bengals, he went for 172, and then against the Bucks, I think he went for like 150 or something in that sphere. So like that's legitimately your fourth guy. So yeah, like. Their offense is going to be dangerous for sure.
Definitely. And you mentioned Joe Mixon. Of course, they brought him in 3 years, $27 million extension with $13 million guaranteed. Of course, they lose Motor to Motor Singletary to the Giants. How big of a pickup was it for them to bring him in to be the running back in this offense, as opposed to going back to Motor or Damien from previous year?
Yeah, I think they wanted to upgrade the running back room because they wanted to keep Motor, but they just moved too slow in terms of getting a respectable offer to him. Because he did want to stay. Like Motor enjoyed Houston, loved Houston, but obviously they so the issue is they went after Barkley. So you can't go after Barkley and then go after Devin, because Devin was also going to have a market, right? So that's what kind of led to Devin leaving. They went after Barkley. They went after him hard. But obviously the Eagles offered more and passed the number that they wanted to pass. And then they pivoted to Joe Mixon, and they was able to make that deal. And it was just to basically, again, if they didn't go after Barkley, then they probably would have had Singletary, because they really wanted to bring him back. But at the end of the day, they did think Barkley was better, which statistically, career-wise, that's not debatable, right? So now bringing in Joe Mixon, who was a Pro Bowl in 2021, was also in an offense where they had 3 legitimate wide receivers, and was in an offense where you had a promising quarterback, and was on a team that was on the cusp that was able to take that next step. So he can bring some leadership and wisdom to the team that they need. Because now they're hunted. They're no longer sneaking up on anybody. And he knows what it's like to be on a team that is the hunted, right? Because, again, the Texans, they snook up on a lot of teams. And what I respect about the offseason is they didn't lie to themselves. Because they were literally, let's say they had 3 bounces go the opposite way. Let's say the running back from the Colts catches that pass. They get it, they score. Let's say Russell Wilson doesn't throw an interception at the end of the Broncos game. Let's say against the Titans, not all the things that went their way. I'm gonna pick the most undiscussed one. Let's say the punt return doesn't get called back, and now the Titans start on their own 30 in overtime. Because they originally had it, I think, close to either their. I think they might have had it past midfield or close to midfield. And then they get a couple yards, they kick the field goal, and that's game, right? They're 7-10, just like that. They're 7-10, not even get a playoff game, but they knew. Okay, or the Bucs game. Let's say the Bucs don't pitch down their leg, or let's say against the Bengals, Tyler Boyd doesn't drop the touchdown pass in the end zone, and the Bengals end up settling for the tie for the field goal instead of go ahead and score. Because that might have been different, right? Where TJ and them, they got in the field goal range, but now that's probably going to overtime. You know what I'm saying? And who knows at that point? Because you lost all momentum at that point. Like there's so many games. Or like how, because the Cardinals, they had the ball last, and then they got a turnover on downs. The list goes on, because there's not that many games outside of the Panthers and Falcons game where they lost, and you could have been like, well, what if it went the other way? What if the kickers missed the field goals? Nah, those are only 2 games for real. Because even like the Jags game, okay, yeah, let's say like their kicker nailed that kick. Who's to say that they were going to stop Trevor Lawrence that day? Trevor Lawrence had 360 yards passing and 3 touchdowns.
Right.
There was no indication that they was going to be able to stop him, especially in overtime or whatever, because it wasn't like the Texans offense was cooking. It was efficient in that game. So I respect the fact that they knew, yes, we got to the divisional round, but we're not as close as our record would indicate. We have to upgrade the roster. And I respect them for that. Some team would have said, "Oh no, just would have ran it back," and they didn't run it back.
Right. Like a particular team in the division that decided to run it back, that would be the Colts. But we discussed them already on this podcast. But of course, one person they did decide to run it back with, that would be Dalton Schultz. 3 years, $36 million, with $23.5 million guaranteed. How big was that bringing him back in terms of just another weapon for CJ Stroud?
Yeah, I mean, CJ and Dalton, they got a good connection. They hang out, off the field. They spend time with each other at each other's houses. They have really good chemistry, and I think what matters just as much as talent is adding guys that help the locker room, right? Like, are you adding good people? Are you adding guys that people want to be around? Because what I will say is the Texans locker room was tight. Like obviously, I remember I covered them in 2022, and their locker room wasn't as tight, but it wasn't like a bad locker room. But I saw the difference, right? Like guys across position group interacting with each other. CJ talking to the defensive linemen, linebackers. You know what I'm saying? You had wide receivers in locker rooms next to their lockers were next to guys on the defensive, the defensive line or linebackers. And the team was a lot more close than previous teams. And I think you want to keep that chemistry going. You want to keep that chemistry going and keep that chemistry building because, again, you're going to have – because they did have a lot of turnover because, they lost John DeCannard. They're probably not going to re-sign Steven Nelson. They lost Blake Cashman. They lost Malik Collins. They lost Sheldon Rankins. They lost Devin Singletary. They lost some, they lost Denzel Perryman. So they George Fant, they lost a lot. They lost a decent amount of starters. And you're gonna need guys you're gonna need guys there that can teach the new guys coming in. This is how we do it here. You know what I'm saying? Whether it's rookies or or guys that sign new deals. So I think Dalton fits in that ladder of what I just described. So you finna bite my picture.
All right. Well, yeah, definitely. What's that?
Dog is bored.
Oh, goodness.
I just got a and I hate the haircut. I absolutely. I got a poodle cut by accident. I ain't know no better. He don't look like this. He don't look like this for real. My girlfriend keep asking me. She keep asking me, "Are you sure you took home the right dog?" I only know when he act like himself, but when he just sitting there, I don't know.
Gotcha. Well, we're gonna take a quick commercial break. Maybe he won't be as bored during the commercial break, but we're gonna flip over to the defense. Talk the defense when we come back on Touring the AFC South with your host Mike Patton.
EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash are two of the best beard grooming products for men worldwide. They help promote growth, keep your beard moisturized and soft, and enhance your overall upkeep of your facial hair. And with the new promo code MPAFC10, you can get 10% off all these products. Just go to www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. Again, that's www.etsy.com/shop/EBO Beard Butter. And again, the promo code MPAFC10. Again, MPAFC10, where you can get 10% off any products except for beard boxes. So treat your beard better today by going to get this EBO Beard Butter and EBO Beard Wash.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South again. That's my sponsor there. One of my sponsors, that'd be EBO Beard Butter. 10% off everything but beard boxes with the promo code MPAFC10. So get your beard right today, fellas. And of course, ladies, if you know somebody with a beard that you think they need help taking care of it, hey, go ahead and get them that. So back to the show. Of course, we're talking Texans and the AFC South. And not only did they make things happen offensively, defensively, they made some things happen as well. Two players that probably you're a little bit more familiar with because you saw them in the division already. That would be Azeez Al-Shire and Nico Autry. Both of them decided to leave the Tennessee Titans and head to the Houston Texans. Now, for Azeez, of course, the familiarity with D'Amico Ryans, that definitely is something that probably pulled him there, along with the offer. Of course, it's essentially it's a 2-year, $21.5 million deal. I gotta say, that definitely has got to be one thing that hit the Tennessee Titans pretty tough right there.
Really?
I would say that loss of that loss of him as a starting middle linebacker, and definitely kind of a guy that assumed somewhat of a leadership position with the Tennessee Titans, of course, definitely.
Yeah, not for sure. I mean, again, like their history dating back to, I want to say, they dating back to San Fran. Because when he got there, it's funny. I think they got there together, and they left together, or at least they for sure left together. I think. So when D'Amico became the linebacker coach, he got there. And then, obviously became DC, and then he ended up leaving. But they both left in 2023. Well, 2023 season. But, I think that's going to be an interesting move. I want to see how that comes together. Same with the Nico Autry. Obviously, they got Danielle Hunter. Really interested to see, mainly because they haven't done much to address the back end. So, obviously, we'll see what they do in the draft. But I'm really interested to see that, because it's funny. Like I looked at some stats yesterday. The defense was basically feast or famine on deep passes, right? On passes over 20 yards, according to Next Gen Stats, they allowed the 3rd most yards, the 6th highest completion percentage, and I think the 8th most touchdowns, or it's like the 8th most touchdowns and the 6th highest. Well, one of the two. But they had like the most interceptions in those scenarios, which, the majority of that came off of the back of Derek Stingley. So I'm actually quite interested to see what the O-line, like what the back end looks like. Granted, like D'Amico builds it back to front, which makes sense. But, I'm really interested to see what that is going to look like as a whole. Because I'm more of the component that your back, like they both go hand in hand. Like I don't think that you can just rely on, we're gonna just rely on 4 to get there. I think you do need some dogs in the back end because eventually, if you only rely on 4 to get there, if they're not getting there, then what? Like eventually you guys are gonna get, especially if you have lesser talent in the back end, eventually like those guys are gonna get exposed, right? So I'm always, it's always that back and forth where I always say like sometimes the pass rush makes it easy. The pass rush makes it easy for the DBs and the DBs make it easy for the pass rush. Because again, like if you're not getting to the quarterback, if you're not getting to the quarterback, then obviously the DBs are going to be covering longer. But if the DBs ain't covering, it don't matter what the D line do. Because unless the quarterback is gonna get there, unless the DN is on block, it's a free blitzer. The DN not most likely, unless the old lineman is straight trash, he's not getting there in 2 seconds, right? It's usually gonna take 3. So if the guy can't, you feel me, hold up on the back end, I don't want to say it doesn't matter what your D line does, but it really doesn't matter for the most part if the back end can't cover a picket fence. It doesn't matter at all. So I'm really interested to see what they do with the back end. Because again, like you brought Jeff Okudah, but you brought CJ Henderson. And yes, they both were 2 top 10 picks from the 2020 draft. This is their 5th season. It's going to be their 13th. You know how rare that is for a cornerback? For cornerbacks to be drafted that high, and by year 5, they're on their 3rd team? Yeah, that's usually, and then again, Jeff Okudah was benched at the end of his last season.
Right.
So I'm really interested to see what they do there. Like now, do I think they have no talent? Of course, I don't think that. They got talent. Like they weren't drafted that high for no reason, and they both can play. It's just you're expecting to see something that you haven't seen before, which is them play at a high enough level that makes teams want to keep them. Because again, like two teams traded for them, especially the Jets. The Panthers gave up, I want to say they gave up a pick. I forgot what it was. I know it wasn't the first, but it might have been the 2nd or 3rd. They gave up a high pick, and then obviously the Falcons gave up a pick to get Jeff Okudah. And both of them were like, nah, we're good. We got granted.
Right.
Fair. Both of them did, they both had 2 brand new staffs during their free agency period. Panthers had a new staff, Falcons had a new staff. But still, they both was like, we good. Like we cool. Because even again, with Jeff Okudah, the previous staff benched him. So yeah. So I'm interested to see like are they playing this scheme, because this scheme is quarterback friendly. I will say that it is quarterback friendly. But I don't know if we'll see what they do on the back end.
Right. I think definitely Aziz is coming in is going to be able to help. Or I would say be a good compliment to Christian Harris. I think it'll allow him to kind of continue to develop. And then one thing I would say about Nico Autry is the versatility. He can actually play inside, he can play outside. If you're playing a 3-4, he can play outside linebacker for you. The only thing I think that probably the knock against him that any people really had was his age. He's going to be like 30 or 34 for the season starts. And that was a huge thing.
Yeah, he is old. They did
definitely. But he did have a career year though, with 11.5 sacks, pretty much his last season with the Tennessee Titans. So definitely something to look forward to up front, and of course Danielle Hunter, definitely someone to look forward to watching as well for the Houston Texans. 2 years, 2-year deal, $49 million, $48 million guaranteed. From what all the reports are, he took less money to come home to Houston. So, amazingly, you're hearing $48 million and took less money. That's kind of a lot to wrap your mind around anyway. But took less money to come to Houston. So it seems like to me, what D'Amico is doing is trying to load up that front and kind of build it the way that he built that Cisco defense was built with, a loaded front 4 that you can kind of rotate some pass rushers in and out of, along with, a linebacker core. And then the secondary, okay, cool. Just cover for this amount of time and or hold your water for just this amount of time, and we'll get there.
Yeah, but the best version of that defense usually has studs on the back end, front end. If you go look at the Jets right now, they got Quinnen, but they got Sauce and DJ Reed. When D'Amico had, his last year with San Fran, they had the number 1 ranked scoring and total defense. Yeah, I mean they had studs on each level, so they're a little more of an anomaly. But they had, yes, you had the front with Nick Bosa, you had Fred, but you also had the safety. I want to butcher his name, Fumunga, I think it's Fumunga, and you had a Ward right at corner. You feel me? So like and then again, like the defense that took us to the Super Bowl, you had Sherman play out on all-pro level. So now I will say they do have Derek Stingley right now. The Texans do have Derek Stingley, who can be like that Sherman, that Ward, that Sauce in this scheme, to where you can kind of get away with, the guy at cornerback 2. I will say that. But I'm not taking that risk in the AFC. If you in the NFC, cool. I'm not taking that risk in the AFC. You see the weapons in the AFC? I ain't taking that risk. You know what I'm saying? Because even like say what you want about Will Levis, right? Like, there are a lot of Texas fans don't think he's that good. Obviously, I have my skepticism. But he got DeAndre Hopkins and Calvin Ridley.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And Traylon, I mean, I'm actually not that high on Traylon Burks, so I ain't gonna throw him in there. But you got those two, right? If you look at the Jags, they have
Gabe Davis.
Gabe is a solid 2. You have
Christian Kirk.
But what if they go and they trade for Brandon Ayuk, like they've been rumored to be in discussion with? Or like you look at, let's say, Miami, right? Tyreek and Waddle, and what if they get Odell, right? Odell as a 1 or a 2, and Odell as a 3. Now you cooking with something. The Bengals, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins, you got Tyler Boyd. Okay. The Ravens, I think Zay Flowers gonna be a stud. I think Zay Flowers is gonna be like legit, right? And they still got Mark Andrews, and they probably add another receiver in the draft, or maybe they hope that Rashad Bateman finally breaks out, which they've been praying for since the Trump administration. Or I'm trying to think of another contender. The Bills, obviously they don't have no receivers right now outside of number 10. But yeah, like, if you go across the landscape, like, do you really want to go into it with just a Jag at cornerback 2 and question in your secondary? I don't know, but we'll see though. We'll see what they do in the draft. Because I'm more agree with Bill Belichick's approach, which is back to front from a coverage standpoint, because they never really had like elite pass rushers. Like they've had some guys like Chandler Jones, Matthew Judon. Like they've had some guys. They've had some good DTs. Vince Wilfork, Richard Seymour. During that run, but their back end always had dudes. Always had. They had Darrell at one point. They had Stephon Gilmore. They had Ty Law. They had Asante Samuel.
Logan Ryan.
Talking to an NFL coach before he ended up transitioning to college, he said, you will realize quickly how much this is like high school, where if you take away their number 1 receiver, the offense craters. Because if you can like mess up a quarterback first read, it don't matter who it is, right? Like, even like, like there's some guys like obviously Lamar, Mahomes, Josh, like they'll be able to, make something happen. But even then, like, you got them playing left-handed, you got them playing off script. You're going to live with those results more times than not. What makes those guys elite is that they can also kill you on script. So that's what makes them dangerous, But if you got quarterbacks off script, and one of the ways to get them off script is by taking away their first read based off of film study, things like that, or just having a dude that can take away that number 1 receiver on third downs. Now, if he going to his second or third options or reads with guys he's not as comfortable with or guys he's as confident with. I mean, we saw it with the Tennessee Titans when they played Miami in on Monday night. They had when they were going 2-man and taking away bracketing Tyreek and Waddle. Tua ain't had nowhere else to go because, I mean, obviously, you know, his third guy was Braxton Berrios, you know. Now, I'm not saying that we need, like, 3 legit guys or whatever. No, but I'm just saying, like, overall, though, like, it's pretty clear. If you could take away guys, well, I forgot Terry was hurt that game, but if you can take away guys like number 1 receiver, it can get bad for teams. It can legitimately get bad for a lot of offenses, right? Like, we saw how much Kansas City struggled this past season. Even with Mahomes, who's obviously an all-timer, how much they struggled throughout the season because they didn't have a legitimate wide receiver 1 throughout the season. Travis Kelce was kind of showing some decline, but obviously once he came back, once he showed it back in the playoffs, the offense could move again.
Right. It's wild stuff, man. But yeah, definitely taking a chance in terms of you know, betting on the front 4 to get pressure at all times to kind of, I guess, take care of the back end. But we'll see what happens. And like you mentioned, the draft. We're going to talk about I got a few questions about the draft. I'm going to take another quick commercial break. When we come right back, we'll get into that.
A shift. A shift is something that happens and changes the dynamics. And that's what happened when Garrett Logistics was born. After 10 years as a sales pro in the logistics world of sporting goods, John Garrett decided to pivot to the world of freight and start a brokerage. So you're saying to yourself, why trust Garrett Logistics? Well, Garrett Logistics helps shippers improve overall workflow, along with increased on-time pickup and delivery percentages. Last-minute loads, multi-drop pickups, and more are part of the services with Garrett Logistics. They're available Monday through Friday, 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and Saturday, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., all times Central Standard Time. So give them a ring at 615-400-8484. That's 615-400-8484, or you can email them at john@garrettlogistics.co or visit their website at garrettlogistics.co. Garrett Logistics, where the motto is, it's not just freight to us, it's your business.
All right, and we are back on Touring the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. Of course, lastly, we kind of wanted to talk about the draft. Now, the draft, of course, is going to be interesting for the Houston Texans because they don't have a first-round pick. For those who don't remember, they traded that first-round pick to get Will Anderson Jr. last year at the 3rd overall pick. So going into this draft, you mentioned, you know, needing more help in the back end, things like that. So with their first pick in the second draft, of course, obviously, in the second round, I would say, obviously, where do you expect them to go? Do you expect them to go more cornerback, safety, or potentially O-line again?
No, I don't see them drafting O-line early. They have too much resources invested in the O-line. They have 3 guys on extensions, and 2 of them already had their contracts restructured. They have their second-round pick from last year as a center, and then their first-round pick from 2022 was their left guard. They have so much invested there. They just can't afford to use high draft capital there. I would say, you know, D tackles is a spot because, yeah, they got the Nico Autry, but the rest of the guys, like, they don't have that many guys signed through 2025. And then the same at, you know, in their secondary is actually more alarming. They have 3 guys signed through 2025. 3 guys in the secondary. They have a bunch of guys who their contracts are up in 2024, after 2024. So, I would say they got to address secondary and D tackle because their ends are great. So you got Will and you got the Neil Hunter, but they're gonna have to address the D tackle spot because if they don't address that spot, then like that could become horrible for them. And then same with, you know, on the back end, they're gonna need to add some. And it ain't even about adding a guy that can like start year 1. It's about adding guys that can, you know, you can get on a cheap friendly contract that can, you know, develop as time progresses for 2025, 2026, 2027, you know. So that's more or less what I'm thinking of that. Because the chance of you finding a rookie that's going to be able to, you know, the second round is going to be able to make a massive impact. It's not impossible, but in year 1, it might not be that high, especially with the roster that, you know, they're in a good spot, right? They have a roster where there's not that many guys that they draft that's gonna like step in year one and like be a massive contributor, you know? Which makes sense why they're going around that they're going. Which makes sense why they traded. They said D'Amico said at the owners' meeting he didn't see a big talent gap. Well, he didn't. He called it the sweet spot, which basically, their draft boards there isn't that big of a gap in that. So yeah. So I think those three spots: safety, cornerback, D tackle.
Okay. Well, you did mention, of course, one spot you didn't mention, I would say, is wide receiver. Now, I know they have Nico. I know they have Stephon Diggs. I know they have Tank Dell. I know they have Mechie and Noah Brown, a few other pieces there. But like you mentioned, not a lot of guys in terms of not past those guys in terms of Mechie, potentially Noah Brown, maybe something after this year. He might be gone after this year. So do you think they will kind of dive into this deep pool of wide receivers and potentially draft one to, maybe kind of compete maybe for that fourth or fifth spot?
Nah. They have a lot of assets. They got to pay Nico if they decide to pay him. They got Diggs. They got Mechie. They got Noah Brown. They got Robert Woods. They got Xavier Hutchinson. Like, they have a lot of money on the old there's a lot of assets in the receiver room. It just wouldn't make sense to draft somebody early, maybe later, but like, I mean, you check it for. I mean, granted, like there are some great late round receivers, but how often do you find a Puka Nacua? How often do you find a Antonio Brown? How often do you find like those are rare, So like, yeah, you can take a flyer, but I'd rather use those picks for like D tackle, O line. Because you gotta start getting cheap at certain spots. D tackle, O line, like cheap depth that you can develop and whatnot. So linebacker too, because it ain't like they got that many linebackers. I mean, yeah, you got Christian Harris, you got Alshon this year, but injuries happen. Not saying like but like you're gonna need some depth. Like, what if a guy is
right?
You're gonna need to, have guys rotate now. So I would say, use those picks on like positions where you don't go 4 or 5 deep like they actually do.
Got you. Yeah, it definitely is going to be just interesting just to watch to see how they kind of perform during the draft and different things that they kind of do and address as well. But of course, we've reached the end of the show, and of course, with every show, there is a game. I got 5 questions, 2 answers, 1 choice. Are you ready?
Yep.
All right. First one up is a Michael B. Jordan question. Which character would you take for? Would you say is probably his best character? Adonis Creed in Creed, or Eric Killmonger in Black Panther?
Oh, Eric Killmonger, Black Panther for sure, easily.
All right.
And
he definitely was good in that one.
Even though I did watch King Kong and Godzilla 4D last week, which was lit, but yeah.
All right. Yeah, definitely one of his more impactful characters, but he definitely is a great actor. Of course, let's see, Usain Bolt or Michael Johnson. Which track athlete would you take if you needed one for the Olympics?
In the one for the wait. Ask that question. Ask that one more time.
Usain Bolt or Michael Johnson. If you need one for the Olympics, which one would you take?
Is that a trick question?
Nah.
No, that's gotta be a trick question. Right? I don't even think like it's even like a debate because Bolt's faster in the 1 and the 2, and he'll give you something. Okay, cool. Michael will give you something for the 4. What about for the 4x4 and for the 4? What about the 2 and the 1 and the 4x1? Bolt just adds more. There's 3 events that there's a reason why that man has 9 goals. 9 goals at the Olympics. There's a reason why he has the record for the 1, the 2, and has the record for the 4x. It was probably the 4x1 that ran 36 in the 100. I mean, in the 4x1. Yeah, easily. Usain Bolt ain't even. Those the Michael Johnson. You feel me? But I don't even think I'd be. If I wasn't in shock, I could have answered that question a lot faster.
Well, hey, I know you have some experience in track, so I was like, well, I know you would definitely educate us on that one.
Yeah.
Let's see. Of course, better corner to you. Of course, I know probably what the answer is, but Sauce Gardner or Derek Stingley?
I mean, I'm gonna still go. I'm gonna always go. I'm gonna go Sting because he get his hands on the ball, but Sauce has had the more decorated career, right? Like Sauce technically is on a Hall of Fame track, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he already first team All Pros to start his career. If he has two more first team All Pros in the next 5 years, he's gonna go to the Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
So like, well, yes, I prefer Derek Stingley's play style more. I can't act like, and granted, Sauce do get a boost from the New York media, but I can't deny the talent that he is. And if he gets two more first team All Pros in the next, he's only like 23, 24 in the next like 5 years, he's gonna go into the Hall of Fame.
Okay. All right. North Dakota or California? Which JUCO experience did you enjoy more?
Oh, Cali, easy. Cali's when I was able to like take that next step in terms of maturation. My first time living in, like, having to pay rent or $200, but I was having to pay that. I had sleep on the couch. Like that one toughened me up a lot more. Where North Dakota, I was still kind of like in that bubble, that cocoon, that delusion. Where Siskiyou, like, there's more accountability, more adversity, less coddling, more opportunity, more experiences. Like a lot of them, my closest friends now I met during that JUCO run, that I still talk to this day, that I call consistently. I would say for sure Cali. That's what helped me, figure out I could, run track at the next level. That's what helped me like sightsee more. I think in Cali, I went to a track meet at Stanford. I didn't compete, but we went. I went to a track meet at UC Davis. I competed in that one, UC Davis. Both of them are D1s. Obviously, UC is smaller. But just being in that environment let me know, boy, I really want to go to Division I. Like, I got to figure out how I can make that happen. But I really, really want to go. That's my first time ever having been on a big university campus. Even though I'm from Miami, whatever, I never went to Miami. I never went to Miami campus. I never went to UF campus. I never went to FSU campus. I never went to even FIU campus, right? I stopped by FAU, but I don't think I was actually on their campus. I went to this training facility by FAU, and I went to football camp. So I technically did go to FAU. I went to FAU football camp once, but that was about it, right? That was my first time ever being on like a legitimate, like a giant campus where you could feel the energy, you could see the kids, students back and forth, like you could see what college, the movies portray college like, those cutscenes. I saw that and I wanted to achieve that. So I would say, that for sure. And I'm being on like a campus, being amongst like students. So,
Gotcha. Okay. Now, the last one: New York City or Houston? Which is the better city to you? Houston, huh?
New York. The issue in New York for me is it's too expensive. I still don't know how the city hasn't collapsed, but it's too expensive. I wouldn't want, it's too fast paced. Wouldn't want to raise my kids there. Too dirty. The vibes are great though. Great. The vibes in Houston, the vibes in New York are better than the vibes in Houston. But the black vibe in Houston is better than the black vibe in New York. Easy. But overall, the vibe in New York is better. Housing in Houston is way better. It's not even close, not even debatable, nothing to discuss. Traffic is better, nothing to even discuss. Your money goes a lot further. Cost of living is better. Only thing is you need a car here, where you don't need a car. So, I would say it's easily Houston for me. Like, easily Houston for me. Like you see, you can get a backyard. New York, like, we live in the city, you not get a backyard unless you live in Long Island or maybe Queens. But like,
Right. Mm-hmm.
Like you can get a 1,500 apartment out of New York. If you paying 1,500 for a one bed, you probably got apartment the size of a refrigerator, or you got like 3-4 roommates. So.
Oh yeah, yeah. I hear you there. I do. One thing I do love about New York City, riding the subway, man. I loved riding the subway.
When I went back, I got over that pretty quickly. I went back for the Texans Jets game. I got over that quick. I was like, man, this thing's too crowded. Why is this person back on my back? Why is this person side on my side? It is 8:00 p.m. on a Saturday. Why? I'm cool. I'm cool. I'm so cool.
No, I rode from. I still remember Christmas Day. I actually was covering the Knicks and Wizards game. The game where John Wall and Quincy Acey got in a fight on the court. I was actually covering that game. Then I left that game, got on the subway from Madison Square Garden all the way to Queens, which is about a 45-minute ride. So that was a blast, man. I had a blast. It was. I could probably write a whole short story series about some of the happened from Madison Square Garden all the way to Queens, man. It was hilarious. But
you're gonna see one thing. You're gonna see is something on the subway. You're gonna see something on the subway. That's for sure. Like, I've seen a lot. I remember one time I had a lady. I was new there. This when I was going to grad school. I was new there. I made the silly mistake to bring food on the subway, and the next to me was eating hot wings, and she looked over to me, and actually she could have some of my drink. I froze and I said, "Yeah, go ahead." And she drank from my straw.
Oh. Oof.
Yeah, I love that. I said, you got it.
You gotta have that one.
I said, you got it.
Oof. I don't even know how you come back from that one. But anyway, that's 5 questions, 2 answers, and 1 choice. You're off the hot seat as the end of the show. I want to thank you for coming on and talking about the Houston Texans, their incredible offseason, and looking forward to seeing what they can do this 2024 season. If you can, tell everyone where they can find you on social media or, any of the other things that you're working on as well.
Yeah, you can find me at DJ Bien-Bien-Aime on Instagram or Twitter, but you ain't going to see much commentary from me there. That's for sure.
I hear you there. Best way to find you probably is ESPN.com and look you up that way to see all your work, right?
Yep.
All right. Well, of course, I'm the host of Tour in the AFC South. My name is Mike Patton. You can find me on the artist formerly known as Twitter at MikePatton82. That's MikePatton82. And of course, you can find me on Instagram and Threads at that's THA, not THE, _general_MP. Tour in the AFC South on YouTube. Also on all listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio. You name it, we are there. I want to thank you all for tuning in to this episode of Tour in the AFC South with your host, Mike Patton. We're out. Peace.
Thank you.